The movie begins in Terrorizing, France in 1956, when a boy named Jacques comes to the church, and Father Noir asks him to bring wine. They then perform their daily chores at a church, after which Jacques goes back to the basement to keep the wine, but when he turns back he sees a football there. He kicks that ball toward a dark room, and when he hears some sound from there, he starts moving in that direction. Suddenly the bottle breaks, due to which Jacques runs away in fear and tells Father that someone is there. Only then do they hear some noise coming from the church, so they go in to investigate, and Father says whoever he is and whatever the reason for his coming, he is in the house of God and he is watching him. Suddenly 2 eyes shine in the dark and Noir is raised into the air, set on fire, and burned to death. All the while Jacques watches as he holds onto the priest's rosary. We then see Sister Irene, who now lives a reclusive life in Italy. The Mother Superior tells her that Debra makes new trouble every day, and today she even refused to go to confession. Irene then goes to Sister Debra, where Debra tells her that her family is from Mississippi, but when she was 4 years old, some white people found them and burnt their house. After that, her brothers joined the army, and her dad felt that his sons were serving the country, so why and his daughters should serve God. Later, the Mother Superior tells all the nuns the story of the Church of St. Carta, that how the demon brutally killed the nuns there one by one, and to break their faith, he took their form. After this, the Vatican sent a priest and a nun to kill the demon. They stopped him by using the blood of Jesus, and both of them returned victorious. The priest was then made a bishop and no one knows what happened to the nun. We then see Maurice, who works at a boarding school in France, where he has made friends with a young Irish girl named Sophie, as well as a teacher and her mother, Kate. Later, Sophie gives him a friendship bracelet she made especially for him, but a girl snatches the bracelet and starts making fun of Sophie, and when Maurice asks her to give it back, she says she will not as he is just a servant. Maurice tells her that despite being a servant, he knows that they should treat everyone with love and respect. Only then Madame Lauren comes there and asks everyone to go to their classes, and tells Maurice that there are cockroaches in her room again, to which Maurice leaves there saying that he will go and check right now. Later, a delivery girl comes to the boarding school to deliver groceries. She is going back after keeping the things in the storeroom when she hears some strange sounds. She goes inside to check and finds Maurice acting strangely, and when she asks him if he's okay, he suddenly looks at her, causing her to collapse in fear. After this, she encounters the demon nun, fearing which she tries to escape, but the door closes and the nun kills her by breaking her neck. Later that night, Mother Superior tells Irene that someone has come to meet her. Saying this, she leaves from there, and when Irene comes down, she is shocked to see Maurice there. He asks her to save him and turns into a demon, and suddenly Irene wakes up from her sleep. The next day, Cardinal comes to meet her, and tells her that some untoward incidents have happened. A 90-year-old nun shot herself on the steps of a church in a village in Hungary. A priest slit his throat with a rosary at Christmas Mass in Austria, and a girl who had come to become a nun in Italy hanged herself. He tells her that according to the pattern, the demon is moving westward into Europe, but its roots are linked to Romana. She asks them if they talked to Father Burr, to which Cardinal says he is dead, and now only she is left who has faced that devil, so the church wants her to investigate. Irene says she won't do it, because she almost died in St. Carta, to which Cardinal says that in that abbey, she did a miracle, and the church needs another miracle. Now while Irene travels to Teraskin, Sister Debra joins her without permission. Irene gets angry at her and asks why she has come, to which she tells her that she wants to believe in miracles. But when she hears some priest saying that they change the wine into the blood of Jesus, it becomes difficult to believe. Irene says that wine becomes the blood of Jesus when they believe, and in their religion, all extraordinary things have come true only because of their faith. Meanwhile, Sophie's classmates make some excuse and bring her to the abandoned chapel, where Madame had forbidden them from going. Once in, they tell her that they will play a game called Defy the Devil. Sophie says she doesn't see any devil, to which she says the devil is always here but she is not paying attention. She then tells her that the devil is watching her, so whatever she does, no matter what she hears, don't turn around. Now when Sophie's attention is on a painting in front, those 3 girls leave her there alone, and after some time when she realizes this, she runs to get out, but those girls lock her inside. Sophie asks them to open the door, but then she hears a noise from behind her and sees a statue covered with a white cloth. The statue starts moving towards her and she sees a glimpse of the nun, and only then does Maurice open the door. She comes out of the chapel frightened and Maurice asks her what happened. He then asks the girls if they think it's funny, and they all get scared and run away from there. Later, Irene and Debra reach Teraskin, where a nun welcomes them and tells them that Mass is still held here but no one comes. People think that the devil came here and they say that their church is now cursed. Irene senses the devil's presence there, and then the door of the church opens and Jack comes to her. He gives her a burned rosary, and only then Debra asks her if she is okay. They then visit Father Nort's room, and Irene asks her if was there a boy here that night. The nun says yes, and he saw everything, but his mother does not want him to talk about this to anyone. Irene asks her if anyone else was in the church at that time, to which she tells her that there was a helper here who left the day after the accident. He came from Romania and the people there called him Frenchie. When they both come out of the church, Debra asks her about Frenchie, to which she tells her that his name is Morris and that he was their guide in St. Carta. When she was possessed by Satan, he came back for her to save her. She realizes that this is how the demon survived, and he is doing all this through Morris. Meanwhile, Kate thanks Morris for saving Sophie from those girls. He asked her why that chapel is kept closed, to which she tells him that Madame's son Cedric died there during the bombings. She then leaves, and Sophie, who was watching Morris from the window, notices him standing at one point looking up. Only then Kate calls her, and when she goes in that direction, she sees her mother going up the stairs. She follows her upstairs where she encounters the demonic nun, who suddenly sends crows at her and disappears. Sophie gets scared and starts going downstairs where Nun appears before her again, but then Kate comes there with all the students, and Sophie sees Nun's figure on the wall. Later, Irene and Debra visit a hotel where they had a booking, but the receptionist tells them that their name is not in the register. Debra stops to talk to the manager and Irene comes outside where some kids run by, but a boy stops to tie his shoelaces. Irene notices that he is Jack's, so she goes to him and tells him that she is Irene and that the church has sent her to help. She asks him if he had the rosary with him that night, to which he says that it was Father Nort's, and he took it because he was very scared. Only then do the children return and Jax leaves with them, and when Irene goes after them, they all disappear, and she gets shocked to see this. After some time, she sees Jax again, and following him, she reaches in front of a magazine store. After this, the pages of those magazines start turning automatically, due to which an image of Nun is formed on them. Irene gets scared seeing this, and then she hears some noise from behind, but she does not see anyone there. She turns back and starts moving towards the figure, and suddenly the demonic nun attacks her, causing her to have a vision in which she sees a man gouging out the eyes of a nun. She then sees the same nun in front of her with a box in her hands, and as her eyes shine, we see Irene lying there unconscious. Meanwhile, Madame Laurent encounters possessed Morris, who stands facing the chapel's door, and when she approaches him, he turns around scared, and when she asks him what he is doing, he says that he doesn't know. Now after he leaves, she hears her son calling her from behind that door, and then someone tries to open the door. Madame opens the lock and goes inside to investigate, and she gets shocked to see Cedric there. Then Nun's hand comes on his shoulder and he starts attacking Madame, causing a hook to fall on her and she dies. Now the next day, when Irene regains consciousness, Debra asks her what happened last night. Irene tells her that she saw a vision and now she knows what the devil wants, and he is using Morris just to find that thing, and once he finds it, he will kill him. Debra tells her that the Jax came to her when she was unconscious and gave her a rosary. Irene checks it and says she has seen this mark somewhere but can't remember where. Debra says she saw it in a photo of one of the demon's victims and thinks there is a connection. Meanwhile, Kate finds Madame's dead body in the chapel and gets shocked to see it. Later, the police take away Madame's body and Kate tells Morris that Sophie cannot be found, to which he asks her not to worry because he will find her. Now after searching for some time, he finally finds Sophie and sits there with her to talk to her. Sophie says that Madame never used to go to chapel, and she feels that there is something wrong with this school. Morris asks her if she saw or heard anything, to which she says no, she just feels that way. Irene and Debra travel to Palais des Papes and they show the rosary to the librarian. He tells them that the emblem on the rosary is the family crest of St. Lucy. Knowing this, Irene remembers that vision and says that she knows that demon wants those eyes. He then tells them that when Lucia was killed by infidels, her family somehow escaped. They spread everywhere in the world and started protecting a secret with all their might, a sacred relic, the eyes of St. Lucia. Debra asks him what that demon will do to her eyes, to which he says that he does not know, but the devil they are talking about now was earlier an angel, who was rejected by God and took away his powers. Irene says he wants his powers back, to which he says that the demon is infinite, and that's why he has been killing her family since the time of St. Lucia. He tells Irene that this time she will have to use those eyes to send that demon back to hell. Irene says they do not know where the relic is, to which he tells her that it had reached a monk named Jean-Paul Rieder, and he had written a letter to the Vatican telling them that he had buried those eyes somewhere in his monastery, which is an hour away from here. That monastery was later sold to a wine company, but now it is a boarding school. Now going back to school, Irene tells Debra that her mother was very religious and said that God himself spoke to her and gave her visions. but her father did not believe her and said that she was crazy and ungodly. Once her father took her to a doctor, and then one day that doctor's people took her away, and after that, she never met her again. Meanwhile, something starts happening to Morris while he is with Sophie and Kate, and she notices that inverted cross on his neck. The nun then appears behind Sophie, and seeing her they all get terrified, and Morris tries to run away with them. Meanwhile, Irene and Debra also reach there, and Morris gets surprised to see her and tells her that he has returned. He tells Kate and Sophie that she is Irene and that she will help them, but Irene tells him to move away from them. She then tells him that the demon is inside of him, but Morris doesn't believe it. However, he is then taken over by the demon and begins leaving there, and when Irene goes after him, he attacks and throws her away. Debra tries to stop him, but he throws her away too. Now Irene orders him in the name of God to leave this man, causing him to weaken and fall down, and then Debra hits and knocks him unconscious. They then tie him with a rope, after which they go to that chapel with Kate and Sophie, and Irene tells them that she is looking for a relic that was hidden here by a monk. Sophie tells them that the goat is the devil, and when sunlight hits the window, the goat's eyes turn red. Debra goes out and from the other side uses a flashlight to make the eyes of the goat on the mosaic glow red. The red light points in the direction of where the eyes of St. Lucy are buried, and they start digging that place. Only then does Sophie notice that the goat has disappeared from the mosaic, but she doesn't tell to anyone, and during this, they also get St. Lucia's eyes. Meanwhile, Debra finds a very frightened girl, who tells her that she thinks there is someone up there. Debra points her flashlight upstairs where she sees a demon goat that begins to move towards the girl, but before he can reach her, Debra saves her and locks her in the dorm. The demon begins banging on the door, after which an invisible force starts picking and throwing the girls. Hearing their screams, Kate starts going towards the dorm, but then Morris comes there and throws her away. After this, he pounces on Irene, due to which the relic falls from her hands, and he is about to kill Irene when Sophie runs away with the relic, and Morris leaves Irene and starts chasing her. Here Debra saves all those girls and hides in another room. They try to enter Madame's room to event, but one girl gets spooked to see Madame there and tells everyone else that Madame is standing in her room. Suddenly Madame grabs her head and starts pulling her inside, and when they all try to save her, the girl sees that cockroaches are coming out of Madame's mouth. Meanwhile, Sophie is hiding in the bell tower and Morris is searching for her, when the relic starts glowing, due to which Morris finds her. But because of that relic he is unable to do anything to her, and Sophie gets a chance to escape. He starts chasing her, but the bell tower building collapses, and Irene rushes in to save Sophie. We then see that Sophie was saved, but then the wooden plank starts falling apart but gets stuck because of a rope. Then suddenly Morris also comes there, and as soon as he catches Sophie, the rope also opens, causing Morris to fall down. Irene comes inside the building looking for Sophie and finds her there, and she tells her that she has those eyes. Morris then gets up again, but Irene uses the relic against him, causing his eyes and nose to bleed. He requests her to stop, saying he will die, and then he falls. They think he is dead, and Irene starts crying, remembering the moments she spent with him. But he suddenly snatches the relic from her hand, which starts burning in his hand, and as the demon gets his powers back, his eyes begin glowing. The demon in nun's form then appears there, and on the other hand, the demonic goat appears and charges the girls, but they manage to enter the chapel and try to stop him by closing the door. Meanwhile, the nun strangles Debra with a chain, and when Irene goes to save her, Sophie tries to escape but finds the nun on both ends. The nun then lifts Irene in the air and sets her on fire, but she does not burn, as it is revealed that she is a descendant of St. Lucy. She then falls on the wine on the floor, and the demon gets furious seeing this. Debra brings Irene aside and tells her it was a miracle. Irene sees the wine spilling on the grounds, and only then she hears Sophie scream and rushes to save her. The demon traps Sophie, and then Morris approaches her with a knife, but Morris stops himself from killing her. Seeing this, Irene asks Debra to pray with her, and she turns the wine into Jesus' blood, causing the Valak to get burned and return to hell. And the movie ends here. Thanks for joining us on our horror movie recap adventure. If you enjoyed the chills, subscribing would mean a lot. Drop a comment to share your thoughts and keep the terror alive. Stay spooky and see you soon.